Welcome into a special edition of Sports Zone, everyone. I'm Sports Director Matt Dowell.
And I'm Claire Foley. Happy 4th of July. This weekend we celebrate America's 250th anniversary, and baseball has long been coined as America's pastime.
It's a sport that's not only deeply ingrained in the history of the Palmetto State, but it has often been what has pushed progress across our nation.
From Civil War camps to local mills,
through world wars and integration,
on sandlots and in stadiums.
This is America's pastime, a swing through time.
Many of the earliest games played here in South Carolina took place right after the Civil War, when Northern occupiers needed to blow off some steam. It caught on in rural towns and communities around the state as a result of that exposure between former Confederates and Union soldiers who were occupying various cities around South Carolina.
Columbia, like many cities across the Carolinas, was a textile mill town. The mill that is now the South Carolina State Museum produced duck cloth. And the mill owners started recognizing how their workers spent free time and saw an opportunity.
You start seeing mill owners really looking at their workers who really enjoyed playing baseball in their spare time after the Civil War, after Reconstruction, and they began to realize, hey, folks actually want to pay money to see these guys play baseball against each other. In fact, by the 1880s, you start seeing baseball games in places like Charleston and elsewhere where mill owners are actually paying people specifically to play baseball. When we think about baseball and sports now, we think of it as always being a professional sport, but in the late 19th century, that wasn't really the case.
Once players began making a little bit of money, many of them made about $2,000 a game, which was really good money for the 1880s. You began to see folks kind of joining barnstorming teams and making inroads into kind of creating their own neighborhood and workplace-related teams in order to kind of grow talent and begin growing the industry.
From there, more formal textile baseball leagues formed.
In 1908, you had the first 2 leagues in South Carolina that were devoted to mill workers. So as textile mills began spreading across the Midlands, the Piedmont, the Upstate, and then into the Carolinas and neighboring Georgia, they came up with these recreational departments in many of these mills where they would offer basketball, baseball, folk dancing, all sorts of activities for their workers to be involved in when they weren't working those long shifts. There were some mill teams who had players as young as 13, even 12. Again, evidence of child labor practices within many of these mill institutions. It was difficult, grueling work and dangerous. You had individuals working without protection near very large industrial engines, working with looms that could often cut their hands, or even you could even lose limbs from that kind of work. And it was grueling, 12 to 16-hour shifts.
The reprieve from grueling labor became a unifier.
For a lot of poor whites especially, the mill town was the center of their lives. It wasn't just a job they went to day to day. It was where they lived, it was where they worked, it was where they had dinner with other people, where they made friendships, where they built families. And so for them, these mill towns became a really important center part of their lives.
Mill towns in particular took great pride in the fact that their athletes were among the best on these ball fields. You had over 100 mill baseball players make the major leagues at any given point in time between 1890 and 1955. So they understood that they were seeing top-tier talent in many cases in their backyards.
Names that still resonate with baseball fans today, like Shoeless Joe Jackson and Tommy Lasorda. By the design of mill owners, work, life, and recreation were all interconnected, and it was all happening during a significant time in our country's history.
Baseball was kind of symbolic of society and the workplace. By 1943, when this player was involved with the Columbia Mills, they were not only stretched out shift-wise, but they were sped up because of the need to produce more duck cloth, which is what we made here at Columbia Mills for the war effort overseas. So that same year, the Columbia Mills team won the baseball championship here in Columbia. They received an award from the federal government for producing the most duck cloth for the war effort. The managers knew exactly what they were doing when they put these programs together. And I think they also knew in terms of the racial politics that existed as well. There was a discussion during this season about adding new teams to the City League. There were a couple other teams that expressed interest, particularly some folks from nearby military bases like Shaw, and the civilian team said no because there was real concern on their part about possible efforts to desegregate athletics here in the city as a result of the participation of military teams. So there's a lot happening in the city in terms of politics, in terms of labor practices. There were kind of efforts to reform what was happening on the shop floors during this era, but baseball was kind of an outlet.
As we learned from Dr. Ramon Jackson with the State Museum, there was reluctancy to integrate baseball, much like in the rest of American society at the time. It wouldn't be easy, but through the sport, people were able to push our country forward as civil rights leaders of their own right.
Baseball, more so than any other sport, has really been the symbol of American pride and American progress in so many different ways. And I would argue that this state has actually played an important role in that broader history of America's pastime as being a place not just sport, but also a place of genuine social and cultural change.
It's no coincidence that ball players are among famous freedom fighters.
No less than Martin Luther King Jr. himself once said that Jackie Robinson playing baseball in 1947 for the Brooklyn Dodgers was a milestone moment for the civil rights movement. Keep in mind, that took place before the Brown v. Board decision. It took place before Briggs v. Elliott here in South Carolina. It took place before the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Seeing a black man on the baseball diamond was so important for people.
While it took time to integrate on and off the field, it was an idea many wanted for a long time.
And so what you're seeing by the 1930s and 40s is that all across the country, but especially in the South, folks are asking the question of, at what point will we stop having segregated baseball and start seeing black and white players playing against each other? During World War II, there were folks who argued that it doesn't make any sense that a black person can throw a grenade in Guadalcanal, but can't throw a baseball at Yankee Stadium. It's worth noting, by the way, that was already happening out west. In minor league systems in Montana, the Dakotas, etc., you would have integrated teams in the offseason. But when it came to baseball in the South, as big as it was for both white and black South Carolinians, it was still a very, very segregated part of their lives.
But progress in black baseball was made right here in the Midlands.
So you already see a lot of support for baseball amongst black South Carolinians in the 1860s and 1870s, but it's not really until the early 20th century when you start seeing black teams that are formed in local leagues and that kind of thing. When we think about segregation of baseball, we think of Frank Robinson, we think of the folks in Columbia and other minor league cities and teams here. It's also worth noting the first black American League player, Larry Doby, was originally from South Carolina. He's often overshadowed by Jackie Robinson, but his work with the Cleveland Indians is arguably as important as Robinson's with the Brooklyn Dodgers. You have the Cannon Street All-Stars, who were a minor league team from South Carolina that became famous in the 1950s for trying to actually desegregate minor league baseball in South Carolina. They were ultimately allowed to go to the Little League World Series, not to play, but to watch, because on a local level, they weren't quite ready for integration at that small level. And I think there's a good parallel between that and the debates over the Brown v. Board decision and integrating schools in South Carolina at the same time.
It's easy to think about history as just events that happened, but they happened because of the people. And South Carolina has had some incredible people who pushed the progress of this nation through their talents and their voices.
We have some just amazing history here in South Carolina I think people just are unaware about.
Baseball is deeply ingrained in the culture of what it means to be from the Palmetto State.
There's a real pride in playing baseball here that's deeply rooted in the state. You think about players like Shoeless Joe Jackson, for example, who are from South Carolina. There's a real sense that this state produces a lot of great players.
South Carolina Sandlots haven't just produced high quality, but game-changing talent.
In my opinion, the most incredible story in baseball history comes from our state. You know, we have Larry Doby, who is the second man to break the color barrier, the first in the American League. He's from Camden, South Carolina. Hank Aaron, you know, people know him as a player for the Atlanta Braves. He actually broke the color barrier here in Columbia. He came here in 1953 and played a game against the Columbia Reds. He was the first man to actually break the color barrier here in South Carolina. We had 4 brothers from Anderson, South Carolina that played in the early 1900s. Each 4 did something historic in baseball. You know, one of them was the vice president of the first Negro League in 1920. One of them the winningest manager in Negro League history. Another brother was the first pitching coach in Negro League history and was an incredible pitcher in the early 1900s. And the youngest brother is actually in Cooperstown. And he was one of the greatest first basemen to ever play. And that's one family from Anderson, South Carolina.
That's continued through generations. Jim Rice, Reggie Sanders, Brett Gardner, Whit Merrifield, and Jordan Montgomery, just a handful of the major leaguers hailing from South Carolina. And some came back to their home state to keep impacting the game, like World Series MVP and Sumter native Bobby Richardson.
I think it's really important for us to think about Bobby Richardson in the same light we think of someone like Bear Bryant of Alabama. In the South, you had to have those pivotal figures who were willing to say, I'm not too concerned about tradition anymore, I want to win.
Richardson recruited the first black baseball player to the University of South Carolina, which did far more than just fill a spot on a roster.
And someone like Bobby Richardson brought with him a winning tradition from the Yankees. He really instilled in South Carolina a winning tradition in baseball, and having black players on his team was really important. It showed that black and white Southerners could in fact get along, even if it's on the baseball diamond.
Decades have brought different teams and leagues to the Palmetto State, and the passion for the sport of baseball remains.
Here in Columbia, the Gamecock baseball program is revered because of those roots and its history and traditions. And many of those started with head coach Bobby Richardson, but they made it to the mountaintop with head coach Ray Tanner.
The foundation is in place. I had the good fortune of entering into a situation that did have tradition and history, and then we were able to build upon that.
Ray Tanner says the groundwork was laid when he arrived in Columbia.
It starts with Coach Richardson. I mean, he's an icon, and he put the program on the map.
Dubbed the father of South Carolina baseball, Richardson led the Gamecocks to 3 NCAA tournament appearances, including a trip to the College Baseball World Series in his 7 seasons as head coach. He was succeeded by his assistant, June Raines.
Both Coach Richardson and Coach Raines were, they welcomed me here with open arms. When I actually sat in a chair here late summer of 1996, Coach Raines came over to visit with me on a number of occasions to help me with the transition, with the personnel, with the players. We didn't have free agency back then and everybody in the portal and those kind of things. So he helped me understand the players and who they were as I began fall practice.
Coach Raines led the Gamecocks to 19 consecutive winning seasons. While Tanner found success early, he knew he had big shoes to fill.
I remember standing in that dugout at Sarge 5 thinking, okay, this is 3 years in a row that I'm in a Super Regional Championship game. 2000, 2001, now here I am in 2002. I'm back in the same spot. I remember the 9th inning so vividly. Was the team good? Were we successful? Were we highly ranked? Of course we were. But we haven't kicked the door in yet, and we're losing by 3 runs in the 9th. And so it's like we'd lost the previous years 3-2, 3-2. Well, now it's 4-1. I'm thinking, well, we got more runs to make up than we did before. And somehow we scored a bunch in the 9th and beat Miami to get to the World Series. That's somewhat of a defining moment, that the path is clear because Coach Richardson had been, Coach Raines had been, and we had to also create a path to get there.
In his 16 seasons as skipper, the Gamecocks saw 13 NCAA tournament appearances, including 6 trips to Omaha and back-to-back World Series championships.
I was all about respecting the game, be humble, never get too high, never get too low, because that's what this game is all about. You can be on an upswing, and you can be on a downswing pretty quick. So you got to remain balanced. You got to handle some adversity, and I think that was the key. The only time I ever was a little bit of a knucklehead is after we won in 2010 at Johnny Rosenblatt Stadium. That was the closing of the stadium. And we were going to the airport the next day, and we drove past TD Ameritrade at the time. Now it's Charles Schwab Field. And I asked the bus driver to stop. So he stops, and I told the players, check it out. And they're like, what? I said, this is a new stadium. It's not finished, but it will be by next year. We just won the last one in Johnny Rosenblatt. We're going to win the first one at this new stadium. And my players were hooping and hollering, and my coaches were like, you've lost it. You have gone off the rail. I thought it would just be funny. I mean, because I never did anything like that. I never would say crazy things like that. And then we did it. It was just a group of young men that had fun. I tried not to take that away from them, but they knew when to be serious, but they had fun. And there wasn't a lot of things that bothered them. And they could handle a loss. They also could handle the win.
While he's no longer coaching, baseball is still a significant part of his life.
What do? You play golf? Not really. You fish? No. Hunt? No. You don't really have any hobbies? I go, well, baseball's kind of my hobby. I love the game. I love the history of the game. I love hearing stories. To me, it's like a novel that, you love something like that, and you just have to be passionate about it, and it's great.
We want to thank our guests for helping us tell the story of how baseball is deeply rooted in the history of the state of South Carolina and the United States as a whole.
Thank you to Dr. Ramon Jackson, Dr. Robert Green, Scott Bush, and Ray Tanner for their time and expertise. And thank you to you for joining us on this 250th anniversary of the United States of America.
We hope you guys enjoyed America's Pastime, a swing through time.
Baseball is life. There's a lot of truth to it. You fail, you succeed. Tough times, you got to get through them. The good times you enjoy, but you got to keep in perspective. That's really the way baseball is. It's hardly ever a perfect day, but you got to hang on to the fact that that's baseball. Tomorrow you may get a couple hits.